Good morning to everybody that's been able to join. Welcome to Strategic Self-Awareness for Talent Development. We're just going to give everybody a couple of minutes to be able to join, and we'll get kicked off and started. I know Anne-Marie and I have been totally psyched to be able to present this, and you're going to be looking forward to a great hour. Be able to ask all of your questions as required. Throw them into the chat. Send me a message directly. I'd like to be able to answer them live. If not, they might get held to the end in case there's too many. But again, plug those chats with your questions. I'll interrupt Anne-Marie anytime I get a chance, and we'll go from there. We want to make this really kind of involved and have your input. So again, please feel free to ask as many questions you like. Throw them in the chat, and I will get to them as soon as possible. Again, welcome to Pixonality presents Strategic Self-Awareness for Talent Development with my special guest, Anne-Marie from Hogan. And we're just going to give everybody another minute. We'll kick off at 11:03. I'm seeing so many kind of familiar names in the chat box, and for those that are attending, again, welcome. Thank you for joining. It'll be a fun little while that you'll spend with us. We're going to talk about strategic self-awareness for talent development. I've got my subject matter expert from Hogan, Anne-Marie, here with me, and we'll kick off in seconds. Anne-Marie, how am I doing as a hype guy? Like, you think there's a chance for me to kind of work in those clubs and get people amped up? maybe I'm a little bit too old for it. But we're just approaching 11:03. We've got a lot of people into this webinar. We're ready to go. So, let's get us going. So thank you very much for joining us today. Hogan presented by Pixonality, Strategic Self-Awareness for Talent Development. I'm Jag Nijjar. A lot of you guys know me, and if you don't, you'll find my contact information in the details. More than happy to reach out to anybody about any of the topics underneath Hogan. I've got my friend Anne-Marie here that's visiting us all the way from Hogan, well, not from Tulsa, Oklahoma, Hogan, but all the way from Australia. I'm going to have her just introduce herself very quickly, and we'll get right into strategic self-awareness for talent development. Thanks, Anne-Marie.
Thank you, Jag, for the warm introduction. So yes, as you've mentioned, Jag, I'm now based in Australia, but originally I'm from Montreal, Canada, and so thank you, Pixonality, for hosting this webinar. It's such a privilege for me to be working with my home country. And I'm also very curious to learn where everyone is joining. So please put that in the chat if you'd like to. That's something I'm always interested in learning. I'm a senior consultant in Hogan's International Distributors team. I'm based in Sydney, originally from Montreal, but my goal is really to focus on accelerating the growth of Hogan in international markets, and also provide thought leadership on various subjects. So I have a background as an organizational psychologist. Self-awareness is something I've come across many times. So please don't hesitate to ask me your questions. Jag and I will try to answer them with our best. So today's webinar is about strategic self-awareness as a tool for talent development. And when Pixonality and Hogan first started talking about hosting a webinar in September, we really wanted to share thought leadership on a topic that would be timely and relevant for you all. And we know that with everyone coming back to work from summer holidays, this is usually a time when people and organizations reflect on what they want to accomplish for their next professional and business cycle. And so strategic self-awareness was really just the perfect topic. We hope that this webinar will feed your thoughts on talent development, maybe inspire you in furthering your own individual development or your team's development as a leader, and maybe your organization's broader reflection on talent development if you work in HR. So for today's agenda, we'll start by looking at the importance of self-awareness and how we define strategic self-awareness more precisely at Hogan. Then we will look at common barriers for talent to develop self-awareness and common barriers for change as well. I will also share some practical strategies to overcome these obstacles. Then I have 3 talent development case studies for you on how you can help develop self-awareness in HiPos, people leaders and teams. And I'll end with some final thoughts and a Q&A session. So again here, don't hesitate to pop in your question in the chat so Jack can compile them and I can answer them during this. So why is self-awareness so important? On a very global level, we have been witnessing significant changes in the job market and talent management in recent years. AI and the digital economy are creating new jobs while replacing traditional ones. And a quarter of jobs will change in the next 5 years. And this creates a significant need and pressure on organizations, as failing to develop and evolve their talents will inevitably lead to business stagnation. And so to address this crisis, it's really important that individuals and organizations take a step back and clearly identify the strategic needs for talent development to adapt to current and future changes. And this requires a strong capacity for self-awareness, which is really the central element here for successful talent development. So self-awareness is so important because it gives us the power to influence outcomes. It helps us become better decision makers and also allows us to understand things from multiple perspectives, freeing us from assumptions and biases. And this is achieved through various mechanisms. So what we know is that talent who know themselves seek feedback proactively and in multiple forms. They also listen to the feedback and accept it. They understand that others know things that they don't know and that those things are important. Once they have sought the feedback and listened to it, they also try to act and change their behavior. And we always say at Hogan that real change in behavior is when other people notice it's changed, not just when you think you have changed. And because they have kind of reduced the annoying behaviors that they were doing, we tend to see them succeed more as well. So their employees are more engaged, and what we really want here, and one of the best benefits of talent who knows themselves, is they're really able to make the world a better place to work. On the other hand, talent who lack self-awareness miss feedback signals, so they won't necessarily seek it, or they will kind of dismiss or minimize feedback messages that they receive, and they will ignore feedback, resorting to kind of shifting blame to others and being unable to admit faults and flaws. They are also slow to change. So either they don't see the point of changing, or under a lot of stress, they will resort to their old patterns of behaviors. So first one, we see that when people are a bit more arrogant and successful, what's the need to change? And for the second point, when under stress resort to old behaviors, we see that more often in talent who lack self-awareness, but also who lack self-confidence. And unfortunately, because they're not able to receive those messages and from their environment and act on it, we see them top out or fail. So, they're not able to change those critical behaviors, and it may even come to ruining their own careers and other people's life. I'm sure we all have some example of people who have experienced that.
And Marie, I've got a quick question from Burnaby, BC. What can be the early indicators that a person would benefit from developing greater self-awareness?
I think some of the easiest things to spot on is, you know, either people who keeps repeating the same mistakes, or the same harmful behaviors. So there's kind of a lack of versatility in coping behaviors, which we know is really important. Another indicator is how they talk about themselves is misaligned with their reputation. So it can be either like from an imposter syndrome side, or the Dunning-Kruger effect, where, you know, someone overestimate their knowledge or competence of something. People may also over or underreact to certain situations. So when you see someone who's kind of over or underreacting to something, it might also be an early sign that someone might need a little bit more self-awareness. But if I have to summarize it, I think it can be, you know, it's, for me, it would be like lack of a nuanced understanding of themselves and what causes are involved in a problem. So whenever it's like black or white thinking, this is when I'm kind of, this is what kind of triggers me. I think this person needs to be a bit more self-aware.
Great, thank you.
So, talking about self-awareness, but more specifically, strategic self-awareness. So at Hogan, we really focus on strategic self-awareness rather than just self-awareness. And what we mean by that is, first, understanding one's strengths and limitations, but also understanding how they compare with those of others. And that second point is really what sets apart strategic self-awareness from regular self-awareness. So, you know, in psychology, there's this widely accepted idea about self-knowledge, about becoming aware of your own thoughts, emotions, and strengths. And, you know, sometimes we refer to this as getting in touch with your feelings or even your inner child. And this had a huge impact in traditional therapy and psychology. But when it comes to personal and talent development, we think that relying only on understanding yourself can set your development in the wrong direction. And what really matters is understanding your strengths and weaknesses compared to others in various activities. So, so that's really important, because you might think something about yourself, but we've done some studies on that, and it's actually really difficult to fully understand your strengths and your weaknesses compared to others. Even the most self-aware individuals that we studied were not aware of some part of themselves. And so personality assessment can be a really interesting tool to kind of help you develop that strategic self-awareness, because personality informs you about how you're all alike and how you kind of you're similar to others, but also how we differ in consequential ways, especially when it comes to you know, trying to getting along, getting ahead, and finding meaning. So we all try to do those things. We all want to get along, get ahead, and find meaning in our personal and professional lives, but how we go about those things really differ. And a leader's personality will determine how they do those things. So, so that's really interesting. We also talk often about identity and reputation, and how reputation is more important. You know, how understanding how others sees us is more important than how we see ourselves, especially when it comes to getting better at your career. So you really need real world feedback about how you interact with people, especially on the social moves you make to get along, get ahead, and create meaning. And you can't just sit alone and thinking your way to strategic self-awareness. People tend to be quite bad at understanding what really sets them apart. And so, yeah.
Marie, I've got another kind of question that's come in from Edmonton.
Yes.
Are the scales in the Hogan tools that give us, are there scales in the Hogan tools that give us an indication of how likely a person already has a good level of self-awareness? And this is cool because I would say 95% of the people or 100% of the people joined are all Hogan certified, so they know the scales pretty well.
Yeah. So we've done some research. Actually, last year we presented at SciOp on this specific topic, and there are some scales that can predict someone's level of self-awareness, but the relationships are quite low. But the strongest predictors are adjustment and inquisitive. So, being curious about, always wanting to learn more, being also, we tend to see that higher adjustment is related to higher self-awareness to a certain point. If you're too high on adjustment, then you tend to lack self-awareness. But if you're kind of in the high average to low high, that seems to be a good predictor. In terms of HDS, funnily enough, there were some scales that were linked negatively. So people, what we were seeing is individuals who were higher on diligent, imaginative, and mischievous tend to have lower self-awareness. But so these are some of the scales. I do want to say, though, that it seems that extrospection, so receiving feedback and, having those real world feedback experiences seems to impact more someone's self-awareness than their own personality. Yes.
Thank you.
So yeah, basically strategic self-awareness and acting on feedback. We were just talking about that, but it's really, for me, true strategic self-awareness is really understanding what you should keep doing, that you're doing right, what you should stop doing that isn't helping, and also what you should start doing that could make you better. I'm sorry, Jag, I was taking this example from myself, so I tend to be high on the sociability, and so I do tend to interrupt people too. This was not targeted towards you. But yeah, so in a nutshell, strategic self-awareness isn't just about exploring your own feelings or your own thoughts. It's also about understanding your strengths and your weaknesses and how you measure in the game of your life and your career. And you can't do that all by yourself. You need some feedback and a game plan as well to get better.
Henry, I just got a question from actually here in Toronto. Can you please explain why high adjustment equals lower self-awareness?
Because if you're kind of overwhelmed by your own inner, if you're naturally under too stressed or you're overly negative toward yourself, again, here you don't have that nuanced understanding about yourself. So it can actually be what we see is that people lower on adjustment do tend to see a lot of feedback, but they won't necessarily take into consideration like positive feedback that they receive. So they keep reverting back to really focusing on their weaknesses and things that they should change, rather than truly accepting and understanding their strengths, both their strengths and weaknesses.
Yeah, and just to follow up to that question, is they understand kind of high adjustment equaling, you manage emotions well. Would you say that's a fair
Um,
description?
I would not necessarily agree fully with that. For me, adjustment, it's kind of your stress threshold, right? And also how much you see problems naturally and how much you naturally want to act on them. So you have to choose your like the right problems to focus on. That's also why probably why diligent was negatively linked with self-awareness. You cannot choose on what to really focus. You want to change everything, or you want to focus on everything, and strategic self-awareness is about really focusing on that 20% that will have the 80% impact rather than focusing on all of it.
Wonderful, thank you.
And actually, so we're going to talk about some barriers to self-awareness and change, and about that 20 and 80%, there is one about that, which is about energy. But first of all, the first common barrier that we see is to self-awareness and change is ego. Because self-awareness can be very painful, difficult, and emotional. Naturally, the human brain tries to keep negative information about oneself out, and that results in biases, judgment flaws, distortions in memories, self-deception, and mainly because our own psyche wants to self-protect. So leaders' ego can also impact others' capacity in providing them feedback. So if they have too big or too little of an ego, people might fear giving honest feedback, and that's just for me that's just a shame, because you're kind of missing out on information that could help you improve and be a better leader. Second one is ambivalence. I'm sure everyone who has tried to change like bad habits has experienced this, but we know that people both want to change and they also do not want to change at the same time. Sometimes it's because of fear of the unknown or prospect of failure. It can be a fear of loss or a fear of novelty. And we know that anyone experiencing anyone wanting to change and being like super motivated to get better will experience ambivalence, and sometimes wondering should they quit or not. Another reason is that self-awareness and change requires significant energy. So it requires you to focus on different things and to really invest your effort. And also behavior change is, it's a lifestyle change. It's not a cure. So this requires a lot of time, effort, but also discipline and sustained focus, which humans were not always the best at doing. And there's also another situation, but when your energy resources are depleted, people are also most likely to engage in their dark side behavior. Fatigue, stress, pressure, and or complacency can also get in the way of self-awareness and change.
Anne-Marie, I've got a question here.
Yeah.
Wow, from Quebec City, it feels like we're moving from the west to the east. It's great. What are the benefits for the individual of developing better self-awareness at work? In other words, what's in it for me?
Yeah. For me, if I have to really be simple about it, it's better relationship and better career. And also the opportunity to feel more meaning. So really here again, going back to our core human needs of getting along, getting ahead, and finding more meaning. you'll feel more connected to people. You'll be able to really provide the world with your unique strengths, and really offer that to other people. Yes.
Great, thank you.
So
I'm hoping the next question comes even further east, so we can kind of keep a momentum here.
And this makes me, I think it's important sometimes to remember what's in it for me, especially, speaking about energy, all the amount of energy that it takes, so remembering that it's really worth it for the quality of your relationship, but also for the quality of your career. And, at the end of your life, looking back, really finding meaning in what you have accomplished on this earth. And then the last barrier that we'll have a look at is the fragility and durability of reputation. So we know that it takes many good acts to be deemed good, but it only takes one bad act to be deemed bad. And really here, perception is reality. So it takes a lot of time for others to perceive change. And this is what we call the asymmetric moral tipping point. So more evidence is required to demonstrate improvement than decline. You have to put in a lot more money in the relationship bank account then, when, especially if you've done like something harmful, then the withdrawal was really big. And so it takes a lot of time for people to notice the change rather than yourself thinking you have really changed. It's also more difficult to display new actions than stopping existing one. And we really, that would actually be one of my recommendations. Sometimes it's just easier to stop doing something than doing something. So stopping doing something harmful rather than trying to cover up harmful behavior with positive behavior. Anyway, so a couple of practical strategies to overcome those barriers. The first one, so my first recommendation would be to set an objective foundation using data, and that's especially good if you want to target the ego barrier. So using valid and reliable assessment can give you a more accurate representation of someone's reputation than their own perception of themselves. Creating individualized development plans really helps to reduce ambivalence and energy spent as well, because you should be focusing on making change easy by setting small achievable goals, and also really focus on individual needs rather than a one-size-fits-all. So again here, focusing on the 20% that will get you the 80%. My third recommendation is to offer accountability and support. So holding participants, talent development participants accountable for their goals, but also providing them support. So it can be finding them mentors who can help work with them, or getting their leaders and managers involved in their development program. And that really helps with that social support, which is so crucial in terms of development. My last recommendation would be to really committing to Kaizen development. At Hogan, we really like the concept of Kaizen, which was brought to us by Toyota. So it's a Japanese concept that's really focused on small changes that on the long term have a positive effect. And, don't think of talent development as a single one and done program. It's really about continuous development that is needed to affect real change. And that's to address the fragility and durability of reputation.
Hey, Anne-Marie, I'm gonna pause you for a second. Another great question. This one kind of came back west a little bit from Quebec City into Mississauga, but how can organizations measure the impact of self-awareness development on key performance metrics or outcomes?
So if you want to really measure the impact of a self-awareness intervention on a leader's reputation, I would say first thing, maybe a 360 would probably be the way to go. So completing a 360 before and after self-awareness intervention would be the best way. But then you could also do the same thing with other performance KPIs. So really getting some measures of customer satisfactions or anything that's relevant to this leader's performance before and after. I would probably recommend like waiting a good 6 to 12 months before measuring self-awareness, because change does take time.
I've got another one for you. What role, and this is from Vancouver, what role do systemic barriers play?
What? I'm sorry?
So the question around, it's what role do systemic barriers play?
Oh,
That's a little
for
bit
me, yeah, that's a very interesting question. The role it plays, and maybe I don't have like the complete answer to that, but for me, it plays into our biases and also someone's environment as well, and their capacity to provide quality feedback, but also recognize when change has really happened. Yes, we're all biased, so yes.
Thank you.
That's a
that was a really that was a tough one to kind of manage in a quick shot, but yeah, there's always going to be some items that influence and it's people.
Yeah. But I like those questions. For me, those are very Canadian questions, and they're very dear to our especially at Hogan. We really fight for social justice, and we really invest a lot of resources in making sure our assessments are doesn't have adverse impact on underrepresented group. We also conducted intersectionality analysis, and I think setting an objective foundation using data and kind of breaking those systematic barriers, for me that could help. Having that data could help in breaking the systematic barriers and bias that we find sometimes in certain organizations.
Well, you enjoyed that so much, I'll try and find you a couple more.
All right, so for the last part of our webinar, I wanted to share some examples of kind of case studies on how you can develop self-awareness in different scenarios, and that's really for to inspire you or to give you ideas. I know September is the time where we think of the next business cycle, what we want to do, and so these are just a couple of case studies to kind of give you some ideas of what can be done at a organizational level to develop self-awareness. So our first case study was about developing high potential. And so Hogan worked with a global IT company that is headquartered in the US. And the reason why they reached out to us is because they had quite a high turnover rate, right? So 32% was a bit too high. And so the companies sought Hogan's help to identify and develop high potential talent, but not any kind of hypo talent that would stay at the organization. And I think this case study is especially relevant for today's challenges, we know that it's quite difficult sometimes to retain HiPos, but the goal here was really to improve succession planning and development for leadership roles. And so what we did, and that's absolutely something Pixonality and Jack can help you do, we created a success profile to both identify the top performing high potentials. So they had, those different characteristics. They will communicate proactively, act decisively, accept challenges willingly, and tolerate ambiguity, but also the ones who are more likely, also screen out the ones who are more likely to lead. And so by doing a validation study, we were able to identify that those who were more likely to leave tend to make decisions slowly and appear reluctant to take individual actions or initiative. And so we started implementing the profile based on these qualities to choose high performers who would be more likely to stay at the organization, but who would also take part in a leadership development program. And so step 2 for working with this organization was to develop strategic self-awareness in those HiPo who are likely to stay. And so we did individual coaching sessions using the Leadership Forecast series to really start developing strategic self-awareness in the participants. So this is really our flagship development solution, and it really provides people with recommendation about, what they're doing great, what they should be doing differently. We didn't leave them, by themselves after that. We worked with the organization to create individual development plans, but also provide them with development support. So on the 3 assessments, and based on the feedback that they received, the HiPos created 3 months, 6 months, and 12-month goals. So they really created a plan, and also they were offered mentoring opportunities from their supervisors. And this turned out to be quite successful. So we tracked we tracked that those different cohorts, and turnover reduced significantly. So I think organization felt that the HiPos had successfully developed as an excellent pipeline for future strong leaders, but also receiving that support definitely also helped retain those high potentials, and also having kind of screened out those who would likely leave was a good investment for the organization. Second case study here. So this case study is one that I was actually involved in, and it was about, is it this one? I'm sorry. Yes, it's this one. We have a global investment management company as a client, but this case study is really how Hogan has helped has helped leaders develop strategic self-awareness, but Hogan being part of many pieces of the puzzle. So for this specific client, they found out that many of their new people managers felt unprepared for their role. And so they developed a customized leadership development program that is run internally, but they partnered with Hogan to develop their leader strategic self-awareness. So I'm going to share, just for everyone's benefit, I'm going to share kind of the process that they followed, even though we were not involved in every steps. But step 1, they defined development needs. And so they found out that new people managers didn't know what was really expected from them. They had trouble addressing, having a difficult conversation, delegating. They wanted to know more about how they can develop themselves and others, and how they can be more creative and innovative in terms of problem solving. Anyway, so they worked, they did kind of an internal study to identify development needs. Once they knew what they needed to develop, then they move on to defining how they would develop those competencies in their leadership development program. So they decided to go virtual and also interactive, because that would kind of create a cohort. But because it's a global organization, sometimes it's difficult to get everyone in one place. So they went in for virtual, and depending on the different regions, leaders would either receive a one-on-one debrief or a group debrief. And I was involved in the group debrief. And it was the solutions that they chose to use there was the Hogan Leader Focus, which I will tell you a bit more later, but really focuses on developing self-awareness on your personal leadership brand. They decided to really condense the training over 3 weeks with four sessions, and at the end of the program, and that's to keep participants accountable, they did a case study, kind of tying all topics together, and they asked participants to present that to a leadership panel. Also, I indicated it for you, but they, again, here for the accountability, they required employees that they must be available for all sessions to be able to join in. And that was really important, again, to really build that cohort feeling and building their social network. So they decided to use the Leader Focus report, and this report was actually originally developed for Microsoft as a custom solution, but we thought it was so good that we would make it available to everyone could benefit from that. So during the debrief sessions, we really focused on explaining what is strategic self-awareness, why it's important, and also what they should be working on by really offering insights on the pros and cons on their leadership, personal leadership brand. And what I mean by personal leadership brand is, different leaders tend to be known or have the reputation to be good on different dimensions, and those are kind of the focus dimensions that we have here. So focusing on data or results versus focusing more on people, processes, being a thought leader, or being known as a social leader. And so, yes, we debriefed them on what do they focus on, what are their unconscious biases as well, because we have the MVPI driving this report as well. So, and the MVPI can really inform us on our unconscious biases, what type of culture also they create, and we gave them development tips. So that's it for this case studies. If you have any questions,
yeah, you know what, I was just about to interrupt you. So a couple. The first one from Halifax. With rapid changes in the world of work, how often should companies update their competency model framework?
How often? That's a very difficult.
I'll kind of try and help you answer this one. When I work with organizations, most organizations every year will take a quick look or have a good review of their competencies, the model and the framework, especially when it comes to leadership. And if it seems to fit, they'll let it kind of ride another year. But if they've seen drastic changes in environment or items, then there's the reason to be able to kind of check back. And then one of the other things that I see from clients is we're able to use the Hogan data to verify their competency model, right? So they've come up with these items. Let's use the data that we're able to collect to validate, is this really the competency model that we live by, or is this what we're trying to aspire to be, right? Or is it more of a vision statement? But, you know, so kind of two paths. It's, you know, you need to be able to review these in time and to be able to move forward. You know, but at the same time, you also need to really validate if it's truly a competency model or sometimes a vision statement addressed as a competency model.
Yes, I agree with you, Jag, and it's also making me think of you. You have to be aware of not becoming complacent about what has been true, right? So if you built your competency model based on performance data within your organization, you do have to check. Usually, we say every 2 years that the predictors are still holding true, because as things are changing, sometimes different things will become more relevant to really accomplish those those performance metrics. And so it's really important that you keep validating also the relevancy of your competency model.
Great, thank you. The second question that we had is in the rundown that you gave, in whether it was step 1 or step 2, people were intrigued by giving group debriefs or that group session. Can you describe, you know, when you would do a group session and, you know, particularly what kind of reports, right? Because not every Hogan report is meant to be in a group discussion format, right? So, you know, we don't want to have leadership forecast series assessments out there and then trying to do a group debrief. You know, but can you help me understand how that's done and where or what types of reports might be the right fit?
Selection reports are out of the way now. But in terms, you know, if you've chosen to go with a leadership forecast series report, you probably want deeper insights, and this is when one-on-one debrief sessions are more important. In this case, we really what the organizations really wanted to do is help people start thinking about their personal leadership brand, right? It's an investment company. They don't necessarily think about those things all the time, and they kind of wanted it was, for me, the leader focus is a really accessible model and also a very insightful. You know, it really helps you to start developing self-awareness. So for me, you know, doing a group debrief would kind of be the starting point of developing some, you know, your leader's self-awareness. But if you want to really up their game, I would strongly recommend doing one-on-one debrief and, you know, going for the 90-minute debrief, developmental debrief. Yeah.
So, you know, in case I missed it, so, you know, HPI-based assessments are typically, you know, fine for a group debrief if it was, say, a career report or maybe an MVPI, you know, with the HPI in a leader focus report. But, you know, again, my suggestion and out to you, you know, everybody that's listening is, anytime the HDS is involved, the group debrief is a bad idea.
Yeah, unless it's you want to do like a team intervention, right? Or like a team that is a group, or a group that is somewhat of a team, but like people that know each other and that are comfortable opening up on you know, the dark side of their personality. But yes, I agree with you, Jag. HPI and BPI usually is quite fine regarding that. Yeah. And how did we proceed? Well, we provided them with their results. I think 48 hours or a week before, because especially for this report, it's quite straightforward, and it's also like it's easily digestible. And the group session was really to further their understanding, but also provide them with an opportunity to ask questions about the model and about the research behind it, or you know, about Hogan and the insights it can provide them. We were just speaking of team, and my last case study is an example where we help a team develop individual and also team awareness. So self-awareness and team awareness. So we work with a global pharma manufacturer that was extremely successful. So they had kind of a manufacturing plant that was really good at, fulfilling orders, but they really needed their leaders to move from that operational to that more strategic and innovative mindset. And so, the goal of this team development program was to get the management team of that pharma manufacturer to go from good managers who fulfill orders to great leaders who lead innovation change. So this was already a high-performing team, but they were not necessarily, they were high-performing for now, but the organizations wanted to prepare them for the future. So looking at different competencies whenever we do work with team, I strongly encourage, I really encourage organization to invest in some prep work with the leaders of the team because, it all starts from the top. So what we did here for step one is we work with the team leader and the program manager to agree on the goals and also get them to verify that they were fully committed to participate in the plan session, but also in the follow-up sessions, and really explain to them that, Kaizen development will be required here. It's not just a one and done program. Then we proceeded with developing individual self-awareness by providing each of the team members the leadership forecast series reports and a 90-minute coaching debrief session. So this can be quite an investment, but you really kind of speed up the development of the team by doing that first rather than jumping right into a team self-awareness session. That way people they know more about themselves, but they're also already thinking to reflect on how am I different than my other team members. Then once we completed the individual debriefs, we move on to developing team self-awareness. And so we had a 4-hour team development session, so that was quite a good one. We used the Hogan group report to offer the team an analysis of their reputation, but we also benchmark the team against executives in the pharma industry, and that's something we can do with the group report. And so as you can see, they tend to be higher on the ambition scale than the reference sample. However, they significantly some members significantly scored outside the pharma industry average on inquisitive and learning approach. And so that was kind of really insightful, as that meant they tend to prioritize more pragmatic and proven methods to get ahead as a team. And so we explored the team's reputation, which is, self-awareness of their team strengths and limitation, and also how that can compare and mostly impact other teams. And everyone at the end of the session committed to small achievable development plans. And they also agreed and committed to we use the stop, start, or stop, start, continue method there as well. Because we really like Kaizen development and we know change requires quite a lot of effort, we continued follow-up sessions with them 6 months later, but also the leader and the HR team continue to check in with the team every 3 to 6 months. So that was, everyone was quite happy with the team's progress, and it turned out to be quite a successful case study of developing not only individual but also the team self-aware. Any questions, Jag, before I share some final thoughts?
If you want to share, just to keep kind of management of time, if you could just share your final thoughts. I've got a number of questions to ask, but they're a little bit all over the map, so I just want to kind of keep them all together.
Okay. So quickly, what I really want you to take away from today is, first of all, self-awareness is super important because it gives you the power to influence outcomes. And of course, it's not easy, but understanding why will be the first step in affecting and implementing change. Another point that I want to stress on is how personality assessment can provide you with objective data and can really serve as a foundation, as an objective foundation to scale up your talent development programs. A couple of, I've already mentioned that, but focusing on individual development plans and development needs and providing lots of support is super important if you want to increase self-awareness and talent development program effectiveness, and really focus on building that Kaizen development culture where continuous improvement is a lifestyle and it's not just a one and done or a one-time program. So that's it for me.
All right, thank you very much, Henry. I've got a ton of questions that maybe we can kind of tackle together. Number one, I think some of the people are seeing leader focus for the first time, and obviously we saw it in the HiPo area, and it's used to be able to help with us. Can you explain where you would use, say, a leader focus, and again, just quickly, leader focus versus leadership forecast series, and those are very, very different.
So both solutions are aimed at for developing talent. So these are not leader focus has not been validated for selection. It's really it's really targeted to foster leadership development.
It's the leadership development of first-time leaders, right? So it's great to have at the onset, especially when we're identifying them as high potentials. We want to be able to kind of give them something a little bit lighter, maybe not as intense as we start their development process, to really kind of put their lens on leadership, look at the different styles of leadership, and making sure that you're not overusing their strengths. Where the leadership forecast series is again a very strong development report, very in depth, and used with senior leader, almost director level and above within organizations.
Absolutely. I think directors and up will kind of stay hungry just with the leader focus. They really want those additional and more, almost like they're more those more challenging insights, right? They're looking to be challenged and they're looking to be challenged, and that can better be accomplished with the LFS.
Yes, sorry. I feel like I asked the question and answered it myself. One of the other questions kind of came in about, validating using Hogan data, validating that competency framework that was mentioned before, right? They're asking, how do you do that? I would kind of put it as, simply kind of taking the competencies, mapping them to Hogan results, and being able to attach the KPIs to those pieces. How would you kind of hit that up?
There are different ways you can validate your competency model. We do have like a huge archive of competency data as well as performance data. So you can validate those. To start off, you can validate your competency model using other organizations' data to kind of give you an idea of what would be the most predictive. Then this is if you don't have any performance data, right? So we're able to provide that. if you do have performance data, use it. You know, there's so much data that is just sitting there not being used. This is such a shame, you know, as an organizational psychologist who love to crunch some numbers. You know, it's such a shame. Your organizations are sitting on tons of information. You just need someone to crunch those numbers. And I'm sure, Jag, you can help them.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. Thanks, Emery. I know we're running out of time. We'll stay on if anybody else has any questions, but just some really quick things I wanted to mention. We're going to be sending out this recording tomorrow or the day after, so you'll see it. Hopefully, hopefully your pen wasn't smoking, taking notes. We've got that for you. Look forward to seeing emails from us about joining the Hogan Alumni Club, Canada. We're bringing across people from all across the country that we've certified, bringing them all into one community, and you'll see those emails from us towards the end of the month, but towards the end of next month. But look forward to seeing it in November. Hogan, we talked a lot about kind of mapping and other items. These are all items that you can learn in our advanced courses and certification. We constantly have those dates available right throughout the calendar, almost every month. Make sure you go to Pixonality.com to find a date that works for you, and we'll see you there. I've got one last question for you, Anne-Marie. How can organizations create a culture that promotes values? How do organizations create a culture that promotes and values self-awareness as a strategic asset?
Look, for me, culture is about what we value, right? And what we value comes down to what we reward and punish. So you have to reward people who display self-awareness, and especially strategic self-awareness. You have to give them more spotlight, and that also means you have to stop rewarding people who lack self-awareness. Otherwise, the message you're sending to your people and your organization is you don't have to be self-aware and think of the impact you might have on others. If you don't, that might even get you a better role. So that I don't think that's a message you want to send, especially if you want to build that self-aware culture. Another point I would say is really value providing feedback and sharing, also spreading the message that feedback is actually a gift. If people didn't care about you or your success, they would not tell you that difficult feedback. And so, yeah, for me, feedback is so important, and it should be nurtured as a gift.
Thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate having you on here, Anne-Marie. Great having you here again. There was a question asked by some anonymous attendee, and I'm sorry I don't know your name, but you're asking more about questions about a group session. Reach out to me directly. I'm more than happy to have a conversation with you, and we can talk about the pros and cons. Absolutely, we'll be sending all of these slides out to you in the coming days, along with the recording of this. Stay tuned for the Hogan Canada Alumni Club. Again, we're going to bring everybody from across the country together in one forum where we can ask questions, we can challenge each other, we can get more of these sessions and really kind of build a community. Really looking forward to seeing you there, and you'll see that very soon. And again, make sure you look into some of the advanced courses that we offer. Again, they take place almost every month. Go to Pixonality.com and you'll find them in both French and English. Thank you very much, everybody. We appreciate you, and we look forward to seeing you again. Thank you.